Marion, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited to be back at Edible.
Right?
It's been a while.
It's great. I'm glad you're back too. So we just had the chance to speak at Expo East in Philadelphia, and we had a wonderful time. I'm happy to be here with you again, but one of the things that we didn't get to talk about really was sort of the big picture of food policy in this country and how it's changed since you've been involved in it and where we would like to see it going.
Well, when I was here yesterday listening to the various panels, what impressed me so much about it is that everybody is working on sustainability in one way or another, and everybody is working on food systems. And when I look at the whole landscape of it, and in the talks that I'm giving now, I'm talking about three things. Food systems, which is a relatively new term, but it really helps you understand what's going on. And then what's called triple duty dietary approaches. I mean, this is all new in nutrition. Triple duty means you want a diet that reduces hunger, prevents diet-related chronic diseases, and also reduces climate change all at the same time. And this is a diet that means eating less industrially produced meat and eating more fruits and vegetables. And we need food policies that bring agriculture and health together.
Sure.
So that we have that kind of food system that is promoting health and promoting a decent environment. And that's what everybody here is working on. It was so interesting to hear the different ways that people were approaching that. But everybody here gets that. Lots of other people don't.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about those people who don't get it, because we don't have the right policies in place. I was talking to someone from the Upcycled Food Association this morning who was talking about how we have these perverted policies that, that increase food waste when we could be, upcycling foods.
Yeah, I mean, the food waste issue is very simple. It's built into the system because we have available to every man, woman, and child in the country 4,000 calories a day per capita. That means men, women, little tiny babies. That's everybody across the population. The population as a whole needs about half that. So that means that half of the food that's produced in this country is going to be wasted, built into the system. And that includes, that 4,000 figure is what's produced in the United States, less exports plus imports. So there it is, and 70% of the food waste occurs at the production level. Because of the kind of industrial production that we're doing. So that needs to change. How do we change it? That's the big issue.
Absolutely. So you talked about this triple duty dietary system that, we need to have in place. One thing, you mentioned hunger and nutrition and preventing climate change, protecting our environment. Where does taste come into that?
Oh, I think it's essential. People won't eat foods they don't like. Well, there are some people who do. I talk a lot to people who just think that eating for health is what they need to do, and that if it doesn't taste bad, it's not healthy. That makes me cry. It just breaks my heart. I talked to somebody last week who said that, he was trying to lose weight and he just wasn't interested. Or people who eat Soylent. Have you ever tasted Soylent? Chalk.
Yep, chalk. So, but ultra-processed foods taste good, Marion.
Ultra-processed food is designed to taste good. It's designed to. Formulated, I mean, there's all this evidence now that it's formulated to be, and now people are using the word addictive in a way that I've really never heard it used before. Even Kelly Brownell at Duke, who wrote the book on food addiction, so cautious about calling it addictive, says it's addictive. Yeah, I mean, you can't eat just one, that old commercial. I love that old commercial. You can't eat, have you tried those potato chips that are out there? Believe me, you cannot eat just one. I tried, I couldn't.
No, it's good to know that you eat potato chips. It makes me happier.
I like potato chips. Everybody likes potato chips. That's the point. They have a place in healthy diets. They just don't have a big place.
Sure. Well, and you talked about foods, certain kinds of foods being addictive and how companies have made them so. Michael Moss talks a lot about this in his books. How can we counteract that? The food industry is so big, the agriculture industry is so big, the food lobby and the agriculture lobbies are so big. How can we as eaters counteract that?
Well, we heard a lot about this yesterday. You vote with your fork. Every time you make a food choice, you're voting for the kind of food system that you want. But I never talk about voting with your fork without also talking about voting with your vote. And I just think that people who are interested in food need to get involved in politics in a way that's very uncomfortable for lots of people. And I understand that because politics is very corrupting. And you know, when people ask me, what can I do? Please run for office.
So many people in this audience should be running for office.
Run for office, even if it's local, the school board, the city council. If you know, politics is about power. And the question is, how do people in the food movement get power, real power, to create an agricultural system that will promote health and environmental sustainability? That's what we need. How are we going to get it? We need power to do it.
Absolutely.
And you know, if we could harness the power of the thousands and thousands of organizations that are working on food issues and bring them together into some massive coalition, that's what Food Tank is trying to do. And good luck with it. I mean, it's absolutely worth doing. Absolutely worth doing. And it's why Food Tank is worth supporting, because I don't know any other group that's trying to do that. And it seems to me it is the essential thing, is to bring all of the work that all of you are doing. And, you know, and it's all fabulous work.
Thank you.
So, anyway, that's where I am. Run for office.
I love it.
Oh.
You and I talked earlier this week about whether there is actually a food movement in the United States, and you think that there is.
Yes and no. It's very different from, I once taught a course in food sociology with a food sociologist who worked on social movements, and the food movement's different than the environmental movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, any of the others, in that it has such diffuse goals. You know, people are working on so many different aspects to try to create a healthier food system, and we need some unifying principles. Sure. And I'm not sure how to go about doing that, sure, but I think about it a lot.
One of the things that interests me sort of personally, and we talked about this as well, is this idea of a citizen eater. And you and I were both at the White House conference earlier this week. And when I think about being a citizen eater, it means voting for people who I think believe in improving our food systems. So we saw Senator Braun, Republican. We saw Cory
the
Booker,
only one.
Right? We saw Cory Booker, of course, who's vegan and you know, an amazing speaker and really committed to farm worker issues and preventing the growth of factory farms. We saw Shelley Pingree. We saw Jim McGovern. These are folks who I consider, you know, people I want to vote for, but there are not enough like them, including Senator Braun, who I believes strongly about these issues.
Yeah, I mean, should we talk about the White House conference?
Yes, please.
So the White House conference was on Wednesday, and I was invited to it on Sunday night just exactly a week ago. It was a little disorganized, I think it's safe to say, but I was very happy to even get a last-minute invitation, because it was so exciting to be there with all these people who care about the same issues that I do, and we hadn't seen each other in 2 or 3 years, so that part of it was wonderful. The themes of the conference were bipartisan, which it was most definitely not. It was Democratic. There were very, very few Republicans there, not for lack of trying. They tried.
Sure.
the one theme was, it was really laser-like focused on hunger. It was really a hunger conference. Even though there was a lot of talk about diet-related chronic diseases, I never thought I would live to hear the President of the United States utter the words diet-related chronic diseases. I couldn't believe he was talking about that. But there really wasn't much about diet-related chronic disease, and I think that's because if you're going to talk about obesity and its health consequences, you've got to talk about changing the food system and changing the food supply, and nobody wants to do that because it's politically fraught.
Sure.
And then the one really wonderful thing about it, another sort of theme, was lived experience. And they went to a great deal of trouble to invite people who had lived experience with SNAP, food stamps, and food assistance programs, either as children or adults, and they had very eloquent things to say about it. It was very touching. And all of the panels had representatives. I thought they did a good job of that.
I do, and I think that was the work of many people in this room, pushing the White House organizers to make sure people like farmers and people with lived experience with hunger were actually in that room.
Right.
And that took a lot. I mean, we've been complaining about how a little bit disorganized this conference was, but they did get those people in the room. They listened to all of us who were pushing for that.
Yeah, and the woman who introduced President Biden, who said it was the great honor of her life, yes, it would have been the great honor of anybody's life, but she was somebody with lived experience, and it was very touching.
Any things that you, I mean, I know there's lots of disappointments from the conference. Anything that you think that they touched on that needs more attention right now, like urgently?
Well, hunger needs urgent attention. You know, that the fact that there are people who don't have enough food to eat needs urgent, that's by far the most urgent one. The long-term problem is, what do we do about chronic disease? Heart disease, cancer, and COVID-19 are leading causes of death and disability in the United States, and they're related to bad diets and overweight and all of these things. What are we going to do about that? 74% of American adults are overweight by standard criteria. We can argue about the standard criteria. We can argue about the cut points. But the fact remains that being overweight is a risk factor, and it's not a death sentence. It's a risk factor. And we're not doing anything about it. There's no government program to do anything about it. There were many promises made and many statements of, we need to expand food assistance programs, we need to make school meals universal. That one's a no-brainer. But it's not happening. And there were many, many statements of things that should happen. Whether they'll happen or not, we don't know.
Right, so much opposition. And that's why it makes me, you know, I was very excited to be in the room too. It's 600 of my best friends, right?
Exactly.
And, but I needed people who didn't think like me. And you're right that there were not enough people in the room who were opposed to the things that I care about.
Yeah, well, there were no arguments. I mean, this was not a place for arguments. And yet, there was a report that was written by Tufts, a Tufts group that was advising the conference, and it's online, and so I could do a quick count, and there were 148 instances of using the terms Congress should.
Sure.
Well, yes, Congress should. Will Congress? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think the only thing that's going to make Congress act, and that's how you get things done, is if there's enormous public support for it. And it's very difficult to mobilize public support.
But Marion, I think one of the things you've done throughout your career is mobilize this movement around food studies so that there is public support. You write about it in your book, I think on page 155. It'll change in the this is just the galley, but it will change in I'm sure the page numbers will change. But you write about how food studies has become this movement, and you've watched it grow.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that I'm really proud of, it's having been lucky enough in 1996 to be able to create a food studies program at New York University. And when we did that, there was a gastronomy program at Boston University that Julia Child was behind. And ours was more academic, and we kind of made food studies academically respectable. And now I think there's 65 or 75. When I was at the White House conference, 2 people came up and told me they were starting food studies minors. So what this is at their universities, and so what this is doing is bringing in hordes of young people who are really interested in using food to change the world. And they're very clear about it. That's why they want to study about food. They want to use food to change the world in the same way that you are all, in the programs that you're involved in, the businesses you're involved in, and the organizations that you're involved in are trying to change the world for the better. That's what they want to do. And so if every university has one of these programs, that's pretty thrilling.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
One of the things that excites me about the students who go through the NYU program is that they're coming from all of these different disciplines. Not all of them want to be farmers or chefs or public policy advocates. They're coming from a whole range of food system areas and becoming, they're inserting themselves into places where food was not talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we created the program in order to meet the needs of organizations and businesses and restaurants who wanted people working for them that knew something about food. Not only, eating it, but also its history, its role in culture, how you tell the difference between good food and bad food, good ingredients and not so good ingredients, what it means to have sophisticated taste preferences, how you deal with the whole issue of taste in the context of culture and in religion and all of the aspects that go into it. And so that's what we're doing. And it's really exciting, and they go out and do fabulous things.
Absolutely. There are more Marion Nestles now, I think, because of it. It's very exciting.
Clones.
It's an army of them.
What a scary idea.
No.
They're not genetically modified.
One of the things that you discuss in the book is the amount of criticism you received when food politics came out. They called, what did they call you, nanny, the food system's biggest nanny or something like that. And I wonder what advice you have. All of us in this room have been criticized for some of our work, I'm sure, whether it's something we write or something we say or something we tweet or, Insta. And I'm wondering how you've dealt with that criticism throughout your career.
Well, my answer to that is always, I had tenure. It really, really made an enormous difference in my life. I know a lot of people get tenure at universities and they never do another thing. For me, it was a secure platform that let me do the kind of work I wanted to do. If you write a book with the title Food Politics, How the Food Industry Influences Nutrition and Health, you need to expect that you're going to get pushed back on it. This is politics. I didn't take it personally, or I learned not to take. Sometimes I take things personally. For a long time, I had comments on my blog. I write a daily blog, foodpolitics.com, 5 days a week, and I had trolls on it for a while, who would make comments about my looks, my ethnic background, my religion, my age. They organized a campaign to get me fired from NYU. And that was, cutting a little bit too close. But when I went to talk to the administrators at NYU about this campaign that was being organized, they just laughed. They thought it was funny. They said, you've got tenure. You got to do something really bad to lose your tenure. It can't be just because of your age. So, sorry. Sorry. You got to do better than that. I sort of learned, and it doesn't, it's disturbing, but it doesn't Most of the times I thought it was funny. I really did. I thought, really? This is the kind of thing I'm being attacked for? They're not attacking my ideas. There's no real engagement with the ideas that we need an equitable, just food system. That's pretty hard to argue with.
Right.
So the arguments get deflected into, you believe that the food industry has some responsibility. Whatever happened to personal responsibility? Well, I do believe that the food industry has responsibility. I don't know how to hold the food companies accountable, but I wish we could. Because I think that the marketing of the products that they market to children especially shouldn't be allowed, flat out. They shouldn't be allowed
Absolutely.
to do that because it's not fair to parents.
It's not fair to children.
And it's certainly not fair to children.
Exactly. In the few minutes we have left, Marion, I'm wondering what has surprised you most about the food and agriculture industry's tactics over the years, how they've changed, how they've sort of swayed, how they've co-opted our language, the sustainability world's language.
That's why we have greenwashing and health washing as terms. That's why we have language to describe what they're doing. My understanding is, I know a lot of our students have gone into food companies with the idea that they could change them. They got disabused of that pretty quickly.
Sure.
Pretty quickly. It doesn't take long. And I know that you work with sustainability people, and I've talked to sustainability officers of major food companies. They are very, very unhappy people because they think that what they're doing is really important, and they're blocked at every single thing they're trying to do. They encounter blockages. What surprises me, and I'm surprised that I'm surprised by it because I should know better, is how consistent the messages are and the actions are. And I have to keep reminding myself that food and agriculture companies are not social service agencies. They are not public health agencies. They're businesses with stockholders. And those stockholders demand higher immediate returns on investment, and they require growth in profits. And if you are in the food business, it's very hard to grow your profits month after month after month in a food environment in which there are 4,000 calories a day available for every man,
Sure.
woman, and child. And yesterday somebody got up and said, "Aren't you really talking about capitalism?" Yes.
Okay, final question, maybe just in the last minute. So there are a lot of smaller companies out there who are, some of them NYU students who have become food entrepreneurs. What advice do you have for them as they sort of delve into the food business area and try to start off with missions that are really ethical and sustainable and promote food justice?
Well, your hardest job is going to be figuring out how to stay in business while exercising your values. You're going to have to figure out a business model that will work for you so that so that you could pay your employees, make a living, have a family, live in a house, exist in this society, and hang on to your values. There are companies that are doing this, and more power to them. I was shocked yesterday when the bee person, I'm sorry I've forgotten her name, but she was wonderful, talked about how hard a time she was having enrolling as a B corporation.
Sure.
Why is it taking so long? Everybody should be trying to be B corporations. I think she described them as corporations that put social values first. I'm not sure that's true. I think there's social values in addition to profit values, that both are there, but the social values remain. And I think that's the biggest challenge, and I'm just so admire companies that are doing that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Marion. This has been a great discussion. Let's give her a round of applause.